One of the things I believe all of us should learn is how to say a prayer in a different language, perhaps in a language we don't understand. Because I'm Catholic, I know, of course, the Our Father. And I also know, or I'm trying to learn, the Our Father and the Hail Mary in Spanish, right? Padre nuestro, que estás en el cielo, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga a nosotros, hágase tu reino, something like that. Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo, bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amén. Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo, bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amén. Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo, bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amen. And then there's this one, which I learned from my friend Balbir. Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tatsya Vitu Varinya Bhargave Vatsyavi Mahi Diyo Yuna Prachodaya. It's the Gayatri mantra, and I don't understand it. And I've also read how horrible it is to butcher Vedic hymns. So this is the thing, right? The Vedas, based on the little reading that I've done, it's not just that they didn't want to write them down, it was because writing them down would lead to their corruption, because they're apparent man, anyway. So the Vedas are not just about communicating knowledge, they're about communicating sound. So if I'm trying to communicate a sound to you, the only way I can guarantee fidelity of the sound, the only way I can guarantee, this is what I meant, that you put the flowers in between the things that you hold against your skin, because the skin can also absorb other things. So the Vedas were about communicating sound. Now, you cannot write that down, right? But if your grandmother is humming it next to you, she can make sure that you're humming it correctly. And so I understand that part of the reason they didn't write the Vedic texts down, or there was some resistance to it, was because They were afraid that people would think that it's just about communicating words, right? That, how will I overcome restlessness, or how can I overcome suffering? When you read the text, that is what it says. But the sound of the words were also part of the teaching. I say all that to demonstrate that I can understand how somebody might say, hey, you are not coming at our spiritual texts with the right understanding and right approach. This is the only time you can say, you can make a case for this whole cultural appropriation thing, that that sometimes you don't fully understand, right? Why a people say that a certain expression should be preserved in a certain way, right? Because it's about more than aesthetics. It's about more than the outside. So I say that to say that some Kalu Kalu person on the internet saying the Gayatri mantra probably, ticks some people off, because they're like, you don't understand. This is not for you. This is not yours. But the larger point I was trying to make was that there's something about saying words that you don't understand that humiliate you. And the fruit of that humiliation is humility. I really try hard, right? When I learn a prayer in some language that I don't speak, to come as close to the intonation as possible, because I think that is the deeper teaching of the Vedas, right? That when you read Spanish as if it's English, that you are doing harm to the language. Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo, bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres, y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amen. Now, I speak at least one other language, right? Yena jo wasro di wonti wa hindim bra wa pediensia sasi su sene si wasro ma yene yende dian fa yem fom so chen sene yedi chen woni awofum yen ma yen konsu hwem na yefum usium mo Mary aduma shawma irade ne woti we hwa wo mem we hwa wo yefunu ba Jesus Mariam kronkron nyamini bompaya ma yena de bon yefo sisi and it don hwa yedi be wo manya ho. I say that to show how my tongue can do the thing that it must do in order to speak to speak Twi, right? And it can also do the thing that it must do in order to speak English. And now it's learning to do what it must do in order to speak a little bit of Spanish, and maybe just a little bit of Sanskrit, and maybe a little bit of Polish too, Japanese and Cantonese and Malay and Swahili. Anyway, sorry, I should have prefixed this one by saying that it was going to be on the religious stuff. But I think that it's important for us to do that. I think that the practice of that for the mind, even if you're a secular person, that it must be truly delightful to be able to at least know one other language. In what somebody who is very, very far from you would try to communicate something you understand. Right? Maybe it's the U.S. Constitution for you, right? That maybe you don't want to do the whole church and Our Father and Hail Mary thing, or the Gayatri mantra, or the 1,000 other mantras that have come down to us, right? And so maybe you memorize the Constitution, and after you do that, you memorize it in Spanish, like a Hispanic would say it. And then you memorize it in Urdu, like Sim would say it, right? My Afghani friend, Sim, she's this really, really cool lady, I worked with her at Staples, and during break we'll go. Anyway, I'm going to talk to her a little bit about what it's like to be culturally foreign inside of America, right? So there's this thing that we are being told is impossible, right? It is the preservation of identity. It is the preservation of identity inside a larger identity, right? If you can relate to it, it's like the mitochondria, right? There are people in America who are saying that it's impossible for organelles to be inside of a cell, right? That the endoplasmic reticulum and the mitochondria and the vacuoles, that they are not possible. What they mean is that if you're in the United Kingdom and you are culturally Pakistani, for instance, if on the weekend you go out wearing your colorful garb and maybe your food stinks up the neighborhood a little bit, right? All those wonderful spices. There are people who are saying that it bothers them, right? And we know that in biology, it's not a big problem, you know? They tell us now that your mitochondria was basically another organism that happened to generate a lot of energy. And something called a cell ate it up. And before it digested it, or maybe it tried to digest it and it couldn't. And then it found out that it doubled the cell's energy. And so it stayed. And it became part of the cell, right? And so, yeah, Sim is very, very culturally Afghani. You know, she has this picture that I want to paint. She's wearing this Afghani dress, and it is like this wall that I'm looking at. It is exactly like this wall that I'm looking at. I will probably take a picture and use that for the thumbnail for the video. There are so many colors, and it's so vibrant, and it's so explosive. It's like watching a bomb of color, right? And maybe she wears that, and then she dresses her children in traditional Afghani, is it Pashtun garb, right? And somebody sees it, and then they say that, man, if you're gonna come to America, why can't you be American, you know? And again, I understand that this is a very, very small margin of people who feel this way. It's not even relevant. But, you know, in the age that we're in, it is becoming relevant. And so I want to talk to her a little bit also about what it's like to be her and to go out to stores and to be so culturally identified. You know, it's kind of like being a mitochondria. You are an organism inside another organism. Now, that larger organism is America, right? That is the cell. And I am hoping that Chinatown is like, you know, it's like RNA inside of the cell, right? And maybe the Africans, they are the mitochondria, right? And maybe the Indians, they're the nucleus, right? They're the nucleus. And maybe the Nordic countries, maybe they are the cell wall, right? Maybe that's what that Norwegian giant is. And the hope is that all of those organelles will be able to embed themselves inside the larger cell, which is America, and make it brighter, make it pop, make it cooler, make it faster, make it greater, make it stronger, make her deeper. Maybe that is how America becomes that apex cell, right? It has to create room for unique identities that resist, right? Because the mitochondria, right? It cannot maintain the same acidity level as the cell would, right? Because then parts of it would dissolve. And so maybe that girl in your school wears her burqa, right? The other day I had this, this video is long. Let me start again.